somewhat better in this particular way.
Okay, I have some thoughts. The case of the dog poop girl reminds me of how like human sacrifice has probably worked in many societies. You see someone doing something egregious, and you just want to sacrifice them to send a message to everybody: pick up the dog poop. I feel like that's kind of like built into human societies, that that desire to commit a sacrifice. Second, some people may have said this girl's life was ruined by this. I don't think her life was ruined. She can let this ruin her life. But I know if this happened to me, I would respond vigorously. I would get that video camera and I would go out on the streets and I'd be picking up dog poop for days. And I'd have it on camera and I'd say, I behaved despicably. You are absolutely right to castigate me. I'm glad you caught me on camera. I'm glad you took a photo of it. I'm glad you blogged about it, because you put up a very ugly picture of it, a very ugly part of myself, and that I didn't want to look at. And you have really helped me totally transform myself, because I want to know how many other ways in my life do I act in an equivalently ugly way as not picking up the dog poop. So I would use this as a total campaign for myself. I would accept the criticism. I would embrace the criticism. I would say, you're absolutely right. I totally screwed up. And I bet this is not the only area where I screw up this way. And I'm going to go and make restitution. And I'm going to walk around the city and I'm going to pick up dog poop. And I'm going to do that for days to show you how serious I am about changing my life. And I'd set up a website, and I would tell the story, and I'd link to the people who'd attacked me, and I would thank them if they were factually accurate, and they kept their comments appropriate to the sin. I'd thank them for calling me on my stuff. Now, also, Marc Gafni's story. I don't, in general, trust people's understanding or portrayal of their own life. In my experience, about 50% of people have a good sense of themselves, and about 50% of people have a totally distorted sense of themselves. I don't know how accurate Marc's portrait of his own life is, and I know that my own understanding of my own life is severely flawed in ways. So what I've been doing over the past couple of weeks with Marc has been going through things that I've written about him, and where he says that something's factually not right, I think generally speaking I've taken it down and I've made a note of it in a separate file, and I will go back to other sources on Marc's life to see if they disagree with Marc, and we'll keep working it through. So I'm really glad that I've had this opportunity to talk to Marc and get his perspective on his life. He's pointed out like 50 factual mistakes he says that I've made in his life, and pretty much every one I believe I've taken down. I've put in a separate file, and then if those cases need to be revisited, we'll have to weigh the evidence one side or another, get both sides on the phone, try to work out what happened. But the writer and his subject are always in tension. As long as I'm writing about Marc, and I plan to write about Marc for a long time, there will always be moments of tension, because the way that Marc views his life and the way that I view my life is completely different in many ways from the way other people view our lives. So there's a tension there between the writer and his subject.
Well, let's just talk about this for a second, about the three things that Levi said. One is, I would hope, Levi, that we've evolved beyond human sacrifice. Let's talk about your first point. Let me just remind you, sometimes Levi says things that are kind of very surprising, right, which is human sacrifice, Levi, is a bad thing. Right? We've moved beyond that. That's not good. That was the ancient world. Right? It was one of the most despicable expressions of humanity, and we would actually not like to return it in the blogosphere. That's number one. Number two is, in a really deep sense, the most important thing. One of the great fallacies, and I think what Levi does, is that he sets himself up as judge and jury, and he forgets that nobody actually appointed him, right? That actually he's actually kind of claimed that job, and there's an enormous inappropriateness in that claim. There's a reason, right, why we have kind of systems, right, of checking things. We have systems of of investigating. We have systems of justice. And there's sometimes corrupt justice systems, and there's sometimes systems of justice that are more honest. But actually, when a blogger decides, I'm going to set myself up, and I'm the judge and jury of this, well, that's problematic by itself. There's something wrong with that initial assumption. But let's kind of put that aside for a second. What's correct is that I actually did say to Levy when he reached out to me a number of weeks ago. Right, I responded, to an email that he sent me, against all sorts of good advice, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I've enjoyed my 2 weeks of conversation with him, and I've said, I've pointed out, 40, 50, major factual errors, and I've also said to Levy, I'm happy to talk directly on the phone at any time. If there's someone who made that claim that was false, let them go on the phone with me, right, and challenge it directly with me. But any factual issue, I'm happy to take a polygraph at any time. That's an unusual thing for a spiritual artist to say, because people say let the spiritual artist or teacher, let him remain kind of, don't sully himself with these things. I'm walking away from this whole conversation. I'm not going to spend my time on it, but I did make a genuine offer to Levy. Right, everything I said to him is verifiable. It's documentary. It's documented. It's clear. And Levy, and I want to say as a credit to his integrity in this, actually responded and took down those things which were kind of verifiably wrong. And I made him a standing offer that at any time I'll engage in a direct phone dialogue, with someone who said something that's false, and we can kind of actually look at it clearly. Sometimes it would need a facilitated context. All of us, I've spent my life, using every piece of energy I had to help people, to be good to people, to work with people. And I appreciate, deeply the thousands of people that have allowed me to work with them and who are now writing to me and talking to me and moving forward with me into the next stage of the world. Whenever you have a strong, teacher or a strong presence, right, there's always a group of people that respond in a particular way. Throughout your life, you're going to have a group of people from different places in your life who are all going to respond to you also negatively. And like many, many, teachers or artists, I've also had that kind of group of people. Right? To any of those people, I would sit down at a table, not in a phone conversation, but at a table together, in a facilitated context, and see, how do we get to healing? How do we work it out? How can each of us give up being right and own what our part is and whatever the contribution system was that created hurt? And my commitment is never to demonize people. And even people that have hurt me or attacked me, and all of us need to not demonize people, because when we demonize someone, it means we're unable to own the demonic in ourselves. So often it happens that someone betrays someone else. When they betray someone else, that act of betrayal they did is so painful that the only thing they can do is they can demonize the other. And when you murder someone, right, you've got to demonize the person you murdered, because otherwise, how do you look in the mirror? Lastly, I think Levy made a good second point. I talked about his first point and his third point. Let me now go back to the second point, which is, Levy says he would have creatively taken this, kind of capricious fate in which he was humiliated, as the poop man, right, and turned it into destiny, right, and actually taken it as a way of growing. I think that's beautiful. I think that's actually a beautiful point. I'm not sure that everyone has Levy's creativity to be able to do it technically, set up a website, make links, and that's a particular kind of person, and it's a particular kind of energy. And it's very possible that this girl actually went through a period of growth, right, but didn't have the energy to do that particular creative act. But here's the point. The point is, it's not the right of the blogger to be her God, right? That's not how the internet violates normal social norms. A person on the train can call her on it, but to then bring her into the Coliseum, right, and throw her to the lions and say, grow, because the lions are gnawing at you, right, that's only the divine, right, has that right. We as human beings only have a right. It's the most important single Jewish idea. We have a right to judge according to the facts in a particular situation and to move based on those facts after speaking to all sides of a situation, right? To violate that is to violate the basic Jewish idea of the dignity of the individual, the infinite worth of the individual, that every individual is a homo imago Dei, is created in the image of God, and that's infinite worth and infinite value and infinite dignity. And we don't have the right, as the blogger, to set ourselves up as her judge and jury. We're going to now refine her. The people who took that position, who said, you're able actually to set yourself up as the judge, because you have a particular form of power, whether it's military power or the power of a blog, and impact people, attack them more than is appropriate, violate facts, ignore the issue of the individual and try and use the individual as a way of kind of making sure there's not a lot of poop girls in the world, to kind of fix society. But the people who said that were called, communists. That was the basic position of communism, best expressed by Lenin, who said, you gotta, break a few eggs to make an omelet. That resulted in the murder of 17 million collected farmers. It resulted in the greatest evil of the 20th century. Right? What stands